Hey again, everyone. Great to see you here at SG1 College Football. This is, of course, Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. You can catch me on my channel. Just search Mark Rogers TV here on YouTube, and you will find it. Just look down below, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We come your way here on SG1 College Football every Sunday and Friday nights, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So make a note of that. Sunday nights to wrap up the weekend's play. Friday nights to preview the next weekend. So this is our big Week 9 preview show with you as we tear around college football and, of course, set you up for the weekend and all the big games on Saturday. If you want to follow my path throughout the night, we just actually finished up a Miami Live show on my channel, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, Miami Live from 4 to 5. And then I'm going directly from here to do a watch party on Patreon. And you can catch that link down on the scroll below on Patreon, a watch party for Minnesota, Maryland. And we'll just talk up college football there, of course. And then I'm going live on my channel, Mark Rogers TV, after Minnesota, Maryland, to take your calls. So leave your comments, your questions, your debate topics there in the live chat, and we will get to it. Also, you can call me at 860-325-3687, 860-325-3687. We will get that number out to you as well. Great to see everyone here. I know that many of you are not necessarily familiar with me. Many years in the TV industry. Now run my own YouTube channel and media content platform similar to what our guy Chris does here at SG1 College Football. So please, for those of you that have followed Chris for a long time on SG1, please lock it in here for college football. I know that he's moving his college football content here, and I'm part of that as well. And so please subscribe. Subscribe right here to SG1 College Football if you're going to be watching the videos. Certainly, if you're here for the sports gaming aspect, check out Chris on SG1. All right. Of course, Trevor Lawrence will not be playing college football this Saturday. We learned last night he's tested positive for COVID. The Clemson Tigers play Boston College. My immediate concern beyond Trevor Lawrence's health and then just his playing status was looking ahead to next weekend, considering there's a 10-day quarantine requirement Thursday night. Do the math. It takes us to next Sunday night, and that's after Clemson's game against Notre Dame. Clemson should be okay against a pretty decent Boston College team at home. Phil Jurkovec has been impressive as the Notre Dame quarterback transfer for BC, but of course Clemson just a superior football team in all aspects. We will need to get locked in on the pronunciation of DJ's last name. I had it in front of me here, and with all the conversations concerning his going back to his recruitment and signing at Clemson, I thought there will come a day where I'm going to need to phonetically remember how to pronounce his name. It's not that it's difficult to pronounce. I just forget how to pronounce it. So I'm going to have to lock in on that by tomorrow, certainly, because he is the starting quarterback at Clemson now for at least one game, maybe more. So my concern, of course, as we all should when we hear the news of somebody contracting COVID, is their personal health, although I will state here that I'm glad that ever since we started to hear about positive cases in college football and all college athletics starting in basically mid-June, when the players arrived on campus, is when there started to be outbreaks that were reported, at least, that I've not heard of a collegiate athlete who has had a serious adverse effect. I'm sure that the major media outlets would have let us know, and there would be some tear-jerking type of stories that would be related to those incidents. So we hope and pray that Trevor Lawrence is fine. My next thought beyond Trevor Lawrence's health, then the Clemson-Boston College game being impacted, and then the Clemson-Notre Dame game on November 7th being impacted would be, is this going to spiral into a program impacting, team impacting issue like it did with Wisconsin and Graham Mertz? consider that Graham Mertz, what was it, Sunday night, it was reported that Graham Mertz, the new starting quarterback at Wisconsin, of course, taking the place of Jack Cohn, who is out almost definitely for the season with a broken foot, that Graham Mertz, the Elite 11 starting quarterback, much anticipated, highest ranked quarterback ever signed at Wisconsin, coming off that 20 for 21 scintillating performance, 5 touchdown passes against Illinois on opening night for the Big Ten, that it just didn't knock Graham Mertz out of the game and move Wisconsin's quarterback situation to third on the depth chart. But we learned within 24 hours that Mertz's PCR test was positive. Then his backup, Chase Wolf, came in with a positive test, and they were down to their 4th-string quarterback, Danny Vandenboom. And then, okay, now Wisconsin has a number of athletes on the football team and team officials that have tested positive, including head coach Paul Chryst, to move them into and pass the threshold of the Big Ten's guidelines so that the game against Nebraska canceled. To this point, we've not checked breaking news for a few minutes, but at least to this point, the game between Clemson and Boston College is safe. All right, we see that we've got some comments in live chat. I will get to any and all comments, questions, debate topics that you would like to throw out there concerning tomorrow's games. Tonight's Minnesota-Maryland game. I believe there's about 4 games on the docket tonight. That's the only Power 5 contest. Minnesota-Maryland, both teams coming off a loss on opening weekend. Maryland's was arguably the worst loss of the weekend. Let me extend that to possibly the worst loss of the college football season, considering the severity of the domination against a team that was 3-9 last year. A team that's much better than 3-9, but still 3-9 and not a dominant team that did they play. I had to go all the way back to 1970. I actually looked this up. I went season by season by season because I thought, when does Northwestern ever beat anyone by 40 points in the Big Ten? They had a 48-7 win over Bowling Green just like 3 years ago. But when do they ever beat anyone in the Big Ten by 40 points? I had to go back to 1970. That was the last time Northwestern won a game in the Big Ten by that many points. They beat Illinois 48-0 in 1970. All right. Appreciate everyone in the live chat. Let's see. We've got a dozen people online. Hopefully this will catch on. Hopefully I will get some of my folks from my channel on over here, because we typically get, about 150 to 200 people online. All right. Good to see you, Caleb. Oklahoma State beats Texas 38-28. Well, Oklahoma State is a 3-point favorite, 3.5-point favorite at home against Texas. And certainly that would go a long way toward wrapping up a Big 12 number 1 seed in the championship game, a first place standing for Oklahoma State, being the only, well, they're the only undefeated team overall in the Big 12, but Kansas State is tied for first place. So then actually Oklahoma State and Kansas State will then turn out to be the next biggest game coming up in the Big 12. If Texas can pull off the slight upset in Stillwater, then suddenly we're looking at a case in which it's now suddenly wide open. Kansas State with no losses, but they have yet to play Texas and Oklahoma State in particular. Oklahoma State would have the 1 loss. Texas has 2 losses. If they beat Oklahoma State, they would maintain the 2 losses, but then they're just rooting for somebody to knock off Oklahoma State, or that they can create some kind of crazy tie for second place in the Big 12 and make their way into the conference championship game. So huge game right there, because Oklahoma State can really put a stranglehold on a spot in the Big 12 championship game, and maybe a rematch with Kansas State if Kansas State continues to win. Right now, they're, I believe, 4-0 in the Big 12. They do have the 1 loss against Arkansas State. And Oklahoma State would be the best bet by far of reaching a college football playoff out of the Big 12. Infected Chris asking about Trevor Lawrence being the only positive on the team. That's what we understand is that it's not impacted the team to the point where the game has to be canceled. The game is still on right now. I don't know that he's the only one impacted on the team. He was certainly the first. It's the only one that I've seen reported, but again, I haven't looked at things over the last couple hours, so I need to dive back into the news. Five inches of snow in Boston. Well, I'm a little south of you, Chris, a couple hours, and we don't have anything close to 5 inches, but we've got a couple inches, and it's not a good sight. Don't want it. Could care less to see snow the rest of my life. Yes, DC games, Clemson will probably still win. And again, I've got to phonetically go with it's Uwe Angale. I believe that's it. There we go. We got John Sirian helping me out there. It's DJ Uwe Angale. Angalele. Uwe Angalele. So I got to practice that like 3 times and we should be okay. I just keep forgetting how to pronounce it. And it was funny because it was just a couple of weeks ago that every Monday at noon Eastern time, I'm on Pigskin Pete's show. We do our college football coast to coast show every Monday at noon. And he will throw DJ's name out, Uwe Angalele. Uwe Angalele. He will throw it out a few times. I'm looking at John's live chat post. Pete will throw it out there, and I'll say, yeah, I never took the time to give it like 5 seconds of thought on how I need to pronounce this name. We'll just wait till he actually is the quarterback, and then boom, here we are. We got CBJ and a bunch of numbers after that on the line. I also believe that he must have tested positive before yesterday, as Clemson says he should be able to play against Notre Dame. Good point there. I did not see that note about Clemson stating that he should be ready to go for Notre Dame. Okay, that's very important right there. So that would make sense. That he must have tested positive and they waited to announce it. Maybe they waited for the confirmation. The second test. Also, keep in mind, though, he is going to be in a situation in which he's supposed to be quarantined without any football activity for all this time, for these 10 days going into the Notre Dame game. So he might be a little rusty. Effective Chris, appreciate that. We've got a loaded schedule here at SG1 College Football and over at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So I'm here to take your comments, your questions, your debate topics, phone calls, 860-325-3687, every Sunday at 6, Friday at 6 Eastern. And then over on my channel, please check it out if you love college football. If you don't, stay away. But if you love college football, head on over to my channel as well, Mark Rogers TV. We post videos there all day, every day. Exclusive live streams, Florida State, Ohio State, Miami, Nebraska debuted for the first time. That's what that would mean. Debuted Thursday night at 6 p.m. No way, Jimbo says, Oklahoma State loses to Texas. No way. Okay. Jimbo, keep in mind, about 22 to 23% of the games in college football, it's like clockwork almost every year. Every year are upsets. About 22, 23% in that range are upsets. So if you look at the lines, so let's go through this exercise right now, because if you go through the betting lines in college football, and I run through all the top 25 games, let's say, and all the major games, even if we go somewhat outside the top 25, just keep in mind that if I read off, let's say 20 games, almost every week, 4 to 5 of those are going to be upsets. So find your upsets, and that should be the question right now for everyone in the live chat. Find me the upsets. Where are they? So starting tomorrow, Michigan's a 22-point favorite against Michigan State. Wake Forest, a 14-point favorite at Syracuse. North Carolina is a touchdown favorite against Virginia on the road. West Virginia's a 5-point favorite at home against Kansas State. Clemson, 28-point favorite against BC. Virginia Tech's a 3.5-point favorite on the road at Louisville. Notre Dame's a 20-point favorite against Georgia Tech. Duke, a 10-point pick against UNC Charlotte. Indiana's a 12.5-point favorite at Rutgers. Ohio State's a 10.5-point favorite at Penn State. Memphis, Cincinnati, the Bearcats are a 6.5-point favorite at home. Purdue and Illinois, Purdue's a 7.5-point favorite on the road. San Diego State's a 7.5-point favorite at Utah State. BYU's a 31-point favorite against Western Kentucky. Air Force, a 14-point dog against Boise State at home. Nevada, a 14-point pick against UNLV. Rice is a 1.5-point underdog at Southern Miss. Navy, a 12.5-point dog at SMU. Iowa's a 2.5-point favorite at home against Northwestern. There's the Oklahoma State game, 3.5 points over Texas at home. Oklahoma's a 15.5-point favorite at Texas Tech. Temple, Tulane by 3.5. Texas State and Louisiana Lafayette. Lafayette's a 17-point favorite. Troy and Arkansas State. ASU's a 3-point favorite. TCU's a 3-point favorite at Baylor. UCF's a 3-point favorite at Houston. Iowa State is a 27.5-point favorite at Kansas. LSU's a 2-point pick at Auburn. UAB, Louisiana Tech. That's a 13-point spread. Ole Miss is an 18-point favorite at Vandy. Appalachian State, a 31-point favorite against Monroe. Alabama, 31 points against Mississippi State. Arkansas and Texas A&M should be a good one, but A&M's a 14-point favorite. That could be an upset alert. This one could be one as well. Missouri and Florida. Florida, a 13.5-point favorite. Georgia's a 17-point favorite at Kentucky. Find me the upsets. In fact, Chris says the Oklahoma State defense is legit. You know it's 2020 when the Big 12 has defense and Rutgers knocks off Michigan State. That Rutgers situation is basically Michigan State is going to be fielding its worst team since at least 2006 or 7. At least. Rutgers pulled in a number of transfers around the Big Ten, not necessarily superstar guys, but players that are going to fortify the roster. And number 3, it's Greg Schiano. He knows how to run a program. He knows how to run a team. He's a pro. He built Rutgers football the first time. Do I expect Rutgers to win the Big Ten? No. Anytime? No. But they now have a capable coach who knows the culture, the system, knows how to run a football program. And they did get 7 turnovers in that game. Jimbo likes Oklahoma State to win the Natty. Making the college football playoff versus winning the national championship are 2 entirely different things. And I know you're saying that they're going to win the Natty. So Oklahoma State, much like Washington in 2016 or Michigan State in 2015 or what we've seen out of Oklahoma a few times, capable of getting to the playoff, beating the 2 juggernauts that they would have to beat after that, I don't see it. Carl thinks Ohio State should be on watch versus Penn State. I think that's reasonable. And most people would say you're crazy. Ohio State's one of the best teams in the country, of course, maybe the best, and Penn State looked that bad and lost to a decent Indiana team. At home, motivated beyond belief. They should be Penn State. That's going to be an interesting game. I could see Ohio State pulling away late. And still covering the spread. John is asking, could Cincinnati-Memphis be one of the more exciting games this week? Maybe second to Ohio State, Penn State, maybe third after Texas, Oklahoma State. Well, I don't know that Ohio State and Penn State's going to be an exciting game. I believe that most of us thought it was the game of the year in the Big Ten before the season started, but that was before we saw what Penn State did against Indiana, in which I know that they outplayed the Hoosiers. I saw every play of the game, but they still lost the game against the team that if Penn State would be the team that we expected them to be, which is the second best team in the Big Ten, and a team that many people were touting situations in which either Penn State would win the Big Ten, just flat out beat Ohio State and win the Big Ten, or would be that wild card, only lost to Ohio State by a field goal, beat the rest of the Big Ten, finished 8-1. Are they worthy of a playoff spot type of team? That's not the team we saw last week. Penn State has issues. Sean Clifford doesn't play well against good defenses. I talked about that all off season. Iowa, Minnesota, Ohio State, against the good defenses, he did not play well, did not throw the ball well against the good defenses in the Big Ten last year. He ran for 119 yards against Indiana, but he had two huge mistakes that led to points in the first half. Two poorly thrown balls, two bad decisions. Journey Brown's one of the best backs in the Big Ten, if not the nation. Emerging star, gone for the season. His backup, Noah Cain, a top 5 running back in the nation coming out of high school, gone. They're down to their third stringer, Devin Ford, and also they will play Kevon Lee. Penn State goes where for playmakers? They go where for big plays? Jahan Dotson, he's inconsistent. He's nowhere to be found. Many of these games, he had a big 60-yard touchdown that should have been the game winner had James Franklin managed the game and the clock properly, would have been the game winner. But other than that, he made basically no impact. I just don't think Penn State, their best player on offense is the tight end. You don't want your best player on offense to be your tight end. And Micah Parsons leaving and opting out, best player defensively in the Big Ten, arguably. And Jesse Luketa, a leader on defense and linebacker, misses the first half against Ohio State for targeting. Thank you, Carl. Appreciate that. Carl letting everyone know here. Appreciate that. DC Games likes Georgia State in a shootout, upset over Coastal. What was the number on that game? Coastal Carolina is a 3.5-point favorite at Georgia State. Slight upset. Coastal Carolina makes an appearance in my top 25 that actually makes sense. Please check that out. It is released every Sunday on my channel. The top 25 that actually makes sense. I've been doing this for a long time, and I just got to the point where, okay, I'm looking at the AP and the coaches poll top 25s, and they don't make sense. Why is this team ranked ahead of this team? They beat them. Doesn't make sense in so many ways that we now produce that each and every week. The top 25 that actually makes sense. Good to see you, Carl. And Ian, Notre Dame fan. The Irish run up against Georgia Tech this week, correct? Yes, 20-point favorite against Georgia Tech, a much improved team under Jeff Collins with Jeff Sims at quarterback, of course. The Florida State commit at 1 point. Philip says, Mark, if Trevor was tested on Thursday and practiced on Wednesday with the team, somebody else has got to be infected. Not unless he contracted it sometime between Wednesday's practice and Thursday's test. Lions fan 02, the Hogs will beat Texas A&M. 14-point dog are the Hogs. I wouldn't be surprised. My picks are on Patreon. You can catch the link down there on the scroll below. What we've got on Patreon for you is we bring on Steve Merrill from Pro Sports Info. He gives you one lock every week. And also a lot of betting advice, betting talk on there. We give you an insider look at our operation. We also have exclusive live streams per request. We also have a big watch party tonight as part of our offering at Patreon. Watch party tonight at during Maryland and Minnesota. Ian letting us know that Georgia Tech has not beaten Notre Dame since 2007. I was about to go back to Georgia Tech's historic win over Notre Dame in I think they tied them in 1980, but they beat them a couple of years before that cost Notre Dame a national championship. I'd have to go back through that. Carl, I have Clemson losing. Clemson losing 28-20. BC with the shocker. Well, it happened in 2016 against Pitt. It happened in 2017 against Syracuse. Could be. Ian's letting us know that Brian Kelly got hired by Notre Dame in 2010, somewhere between November and December. Carl, that's an interesting two teams that you've selected there as your favorite teams, Ohio State and Miami. I'm guessing you weren't around in 2002. Ian would like to see Notre Dame and Penn State play. Are we talking about in a playoff situation? I don't know if they've scheduled anything down the road. And it will be an interesting off-season topic to see what happens with all the non-conference games that were canceled this year, to see what happens to those contracts. That will be an interesting topic. So in the future for Notre Dame in 2021, outside of their usual complement of ACC teams, they've got Purdue and Wisconsin. They've got Cincinnati. They've got, of course, USC and Navy. They've got Stanford. In 2022, Notre Dame at Ohio State. They've got Cal. They've got Clemson again. They've got Navy. They've got their standard ACC games. 2023, in addition to the ACC games, they've got Ohio State at home, USC, Navy, Stanford. 2024, Notre Dame takes on Texas A&M. Purdue. And the typical ACC schedule. In 2025, Notre Dame's got Texas A&M and Arkansas, a couple SEC games there. Interesting. And Purdue. 2026, Notre Dame's got Purdue again, USC, of course, Michigan State. 2027, Purdue, and I don't see anybody else. Alabama's coming up in 2028 and 29 for the Irish. They've got Michigan coming up in 2033. Who knows what this world's going to look like then. And the next year, they take on Michigan at home. No Penn State. Sorry, Ian. Would also like to see Notre Dame, Texas A&M. Well, that's coming up in, 5 years? Four years, 2024, Notre Dame, Oklahoma State. Ann is asking if Florida can beat Georgia. Heck yeah, they can. Georgia's got the better roster. Georgia has one of the three best rosters in college football. Florida's is more in the 10 to 12 range. Georgia does have what I believe has shown to be the best defense in college football. I'm not going to state that as an all-encompassing statement for sure, but to this point, I believe they played the best defense in college football thus far. So I believe Georgia's, especially with Florida, that shaky on defense. I would like to see Florida make a defensive improvement against a good passing team in Missouri with also Larry Roundtree, a very capable running back. So Florida needs to fix, and it's had plenty of time to watch film for Todd Grantham to figure out, is this a personnel issue on defense for Florida, or is this a scheme issue? Probably a combination. But Georgia's going to be a tall task for Florida once again. But as long as you can throw the ball as effectively as Florida can, and Georgia, if they continue to struggle in the passing game like they did against Bama in the second half, then that's the formula for an upset that makes up for a big talent gap. When one team can throw it and catch it, play pitch and catch like Florida, and Georgia may struggle over there, then that will balance out the talent discrepancy, which isn't great, but it's decided. Jimbo's asking if Tulsa is underrated. Well, I don't know who's rating them. I've got them rated like, I forget where in my top 25, around 18th. They, of course, played a close game against Oklahoma State. They led in the fourth quarter. Oklahoma State was without Spencer Sanders in that game. They beat UCF. They did what you would expect a good team to do against a bad USF team. They trounced them. Tulsa is probably one of the, even though I've got them ranked, my ranking is contingent on performance and results. I would say Tulsa is one of the 35 or 40 best teams in the country. Ian says it seems like Florida's defense don't do good in the first quarter, but it's a strong defense for the rest of the game. Sports Highlighting, good to see you. Carl, I think Brian Kelly could be on the hot seat. Brian Kelly's not on the hot seat. To me, the hot seat means that a particular coach will be fired if they don't have a season up to expectation. I think it's reasonable to think that Notre Dame's going to go, let's say, 9-2 this year. And then unless they pull off an upset in the ACC championship game, they're going to be relegated to Gator Bowl type bowl. And the bowl schedule just came out today. That is not going to get Brian Kelly fired. Now, if he loses the rest of his games and he's suddenly 5-6, sure. But I don't even know if that would get him fired. Brian Kelly's not getting fired after this year unless there's some off the field issues. Will Notre Dame stay in the ACC next year or go back to independent? It's completely my understanding that this was a one-year deal because Notre Dame had no one to play, and the ACC was certainly more than accepting of Notre Dame coming into the league, making them money. I hate it. Go over to my channel and hear me rant for 10 minutes. Just look up Notre Dame ACC agreement or something like that. I went off on that deal because to me, no self-respecting conference. The SEC wouldn't do this. The Big Ten would not do this. They would not say, oh, you're good enough to play in our league in every other sport. Every other sport, you're good enough to play in our league, play with our teams, but you're too good in football. If I was the ACC, I would have held Notre Dame hostage and I would have told them, do you want to play football in the year 2020? If you don't want to play football, fine. We are playing a football season. Therefore, if you want to play football in 2020, then you are going to join our conference and you are going to stay joined to our conference for an extended period of time. And I would have signed them to at least a 20-year contract. Philip, that's a good point. We are not hearing about any other players having contracted the virus. And it took how long before we heard about Wisconsin and other players testing positive? I think it was the next day. So here we are one day later after the Trevor Lawrence news, and nothing more out of Clemson or the ACC about the game. Cinna Minson, 06. Will the Big 12 exist in 10 years? I would put my money on the Big 12 still being here in 10 years. It wouldn't surprise me. We've had a bit of a settling down of all the conference realignment that really erupted 2010 to 12. That was the time in which Texas A&M and Missouri moved, and Colorado moved, and Nebraska and Rutgers and Maryland just a few years later. Kevin Ballman, Oklahoma State, going to luck into a playoff, got robbed in 2011. They did get robbed. People asked me at the end of the conference championship games, once the BCS determined who would play in the championship game in 2011, they asked me, are you good with Alabama LSU? Did they get the two best teams? And I said, well, there's a difference between the two best teams and the two teams that earned the spot. And my thought was that Oklahoma State did get robbed. I fully believe and still do to this day that Alabama and LSU, Alabama and LSU in 2011 were the two best teams, but Oklahoma State should have played in the BCS championship game against LSU. Alabama played in the regular season. They played LSU. They did not win the division. And should the playoff be 8 teams? Yes, it should. Infected Chris, it hit me more than at any other time that Notre Dame should be in a conference during championship weekend in 2018. Because prior to that, I would look at Notre Dame's schedule and say, you know what, they play a killer schedule. And the only time that they don't play a killer schedule would be in that 2018 season when they went undefeated, and it wasn't their fault. But USC was down 5-7. Stanford was a little bit down from what they had been. I think they went 8-4. Virginia Tech was down. Florida State was down. So the schedule that has Stanford and USC and Virginia Tech and Florida State then becomes this schedule that's not a good schedule, but not their fault. Notre Dame always plays a loaded, packed schedule. Look at this schedule for next year. Florida State, Toledo, Purdue, Wisconsin, Cincinnati, Virginia Tech, USC, North Carolina, Navy, Virginia, Georgia Tech, Stanford. The next year, Ohio State, Marshall, Cal, Stanford, UNLV, Clemson, Navy, USC, Boston College, North Carolina, Syracuse. So Notre Dame doesn't have to apologize for its scheduling approach. But I'm watching the conference championships thinking it's between Oklahoma and Ohio State. Notre Dame is sitting at home. They get to sit at home while everybody else is playing a 13th game. So they get to play their 12 and then sit out. And Oklahoma and Ohio State have to put their season on the line in a 13th game. Oklahoma had the advantage of playing a team that beat them, Texas, and getting the rematch, the revenge, and the win. Ohio State didn't have that luxury. Purdue did not make it to the championship game, and therefore they played Northwestern. So I thought Ohio State had the worst loss. Oklahoma went to the playoff. Ohio State actually had the better wins, but one of them had to sit out. One of them made it. So regardless, I was not good with the result because one deserving team that earned a spot as a conference champion with one loss was going to have to sit out of the playoff, while Notre Dame, who did not have to play a 13th game, got to go to the playoff. That Clemson annihilation of Notre Dame, that should have been the ACC championship game, not watching Clemson beat a 7-7 Pitt team. Clemson Notre Dame should have been the ACC championship game. Then we would have had both Oklahoma and Ohio State in the playoff. And it would have been similar to 2019 when it actually kind of worked out because we had clearly four teams that distinguished themselves, really three, but then Oklahoma was a decided winner over Oregon for the fourth spot. That's what we would have had in 2018 because it would have been Alabama-Clemson or Alabama and the Clemson-Notre Dame ACC winner. Who am I missing? Oklahoma-Ohio State. Yeah. Samuel says, unpopular opinion. Notre Dame has not joined a conference because they don't want to lose historic rivalry games. Sure, I understand that, but two of those four historic rivalry games they have lost. They don't schedule anymore. Michigan, Michigan State. They're not playing Michigan this season. They're not playing them in 2021 or 22 or 23 or 24 or 25 or 26 or 27. They're not playing Michigan until 2033. Notre Dame plays Michigan State next. It's sometime coming up, 2026. But you're right. It's like Miami fans criticize Florida for not playing them every year, but Florida already plays Florida State. What are they supposed to play? Florida State and Miami every year, and then they would never play another good out of conference opponent because you can't play in the SEC and then play Miami and Florida State and some other Power 5 team. Good to see a lot of faces, a lot of names that I'm not familiar with. Just to let you know, I'm Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. Please check out my YouTube channel, Mark Rogers TV. Just search it. We got a little deal on Patreon that I think you'll like. Predictions, betting advice, insider look. You'll have to find out what that's all about. Exclusive live streams per your request. You request a live stream, I deliver it with you coming on if you'd like. And then also we've got watch parties, as we will tonight with the Minnesota-Maryland game. All right. So, yeah, tons of people in here that I'm not familiar with. So it's good to see. Nicholas, Lions fan. Yes, there was a lot of that accidental scoring this week. James Franklin blew it. His excuse to say that we practiced this situation, I don't buy it. You can talk to your team about the situation, but there's no way you can practice it so that they'll know, and do the math in their heads. Coach talked to us and ran us through the drill where there was a minute 47 on the clock and the other team only had one timeout and we were up by less than a touchdown. So this is what we need to do. No, that's impossible to go through every type of scenario. How in the world would you do that on a practice field? Okay, now there's 51 seconds left. We're winning by 2 and the other team has no timeouts. Okay. Now there's a minute 21 and the other team has one timeout and we're up by 6. No. You talk to the team to say there are situations in which the other team will want us to try to score. So we don't want to score because then we are handing the football back to them, and that's the only way that they can win the game. So there are going to be situations in games in which there is a little time left. We have the ball, we have a lead, but we don't want to score because we want to run the clock out. And we will let you know when that time comes. There was a change of possession. Penn State's defense stopped Indiana. So James Franklin and his staff had the entire offense right there to be able to tell them, before you go out on the field. They had a natural timeout and change of possession. Say, do not score. Really, they only had to talk to 2 players. Talk to Sean Clifford so he knows, the quarterback, and talk to the running back who's going to get the ball. Was it Devin Ford or Kevon Lee? Devin Ford, I believe. Those are the only 2 players that need to know. Well, there could be some crazy situation where the running back fumbles and an offensive lineman would pick it up and run it into the end zone for a touchdown. Todd Gurley knew what to do. He's executed that before, but his sin in the whole matter was running too fast toward the goal line. You don't run like a 4-5 to the goal line and at the half-yard line decide that you want to stop. That's not the time to decide that. I did not hear, Roberto, good to see you. Did not hear what Feinbaum said about Nebraska scheduling Chattanooga. Yes, Cinnamonson, 2011. Brandon Weeden, quarterback at Oklahoma State, soon to be drafted by the Cleveland Browns. 29th, I believe, in the first round. Busy weekend here at SG1 College Football. Keep it locked in here. Also at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So I see a lot of new people here. Maybe not new to SG1 College Football, but new to me, and I'm new to you. So it's great to see you and talk college football. That's what I do every day at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We talk college football constantly, pumping out videos, live streams, call-in shows all over the place all the time. Ask a number of folks in here like Carl and who else did we just have in here? I just answered their question. Roberto. and a number of other people. So I will be here at SG1 College Football every Friday to preview the weekend, and every Sunday to wrap up the weekend at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Friday and Sunday. And then we do a late night call-in show on my channel on Sunday nights. And we do Florida State, Nebraska, Ohio State, and Miami live streams throughout the week on my channel. And if anyone gets me a sponsor, like if you really want a Clemson show, find me a sponsor. We'll do a Clemson show. I was not doing a Nebraska show before last week. Somebody just showed up and said, Mark, I got you a sponsor. Do a Nebraska show. Bam. We started one on Thursday night. So I couldn't even get into everything that we've got for you at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Just dig in, look at it. Just look it over. I think you'll like what we do. Chris does a fine job here at SG1 College Football. So I hope you're all subscribed. And I want to run through the schedule for tomorrow. You see the scroll running below? That's Patreon and everything we've got for you right there. Watch parties, exclusive live streams per request, insider look, betting advice, my predictions, and a lead pipe lock each week, courtesy Steve Merrill from Pro Sports Info. Let's run down the schedule. I'll let you know how I'm looking at this, if we can ever get the schedule to load. So tonight, again, at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, we're going to do instant analysis call-in show after the Minnesota-Maryland game. During the game, we've got a watch party on Patreon, so check us out. So that's the only Power 5 game tonight. There's also East Carolina, Tulsa, with, of course, Tulsa in my top 25. And then we've got Hawaii and Wyoming. Okay, tomorrow at noon, the much anticipated debut of DJ Uiagalelei. I missed a lay in there. Uiagalelei. Boston College at Clemson. Georgia, Kentucky at noon. Memphis, Cincinnati. Interesting game. Michigan, Michigan State for you traditional diehards, but it will probably not be a great game. Kansas State, West Virginia. Iowa State, Kansas. Okay, those are the noon games, including Purdue, Illinois. Okay, my approach to football tomorrow at noon is going to be, I am going to start out just for tradition's sake, and because I'm an old traditionalist, Michigan State will most likely be on my main screen to start before it gets to be a blowout. And I will have my two side screens on. I want to see DJ play Clemson, Boston College, and Georgia, Kentucky. Those are the games. But certainly, if I get to a place where it's close to the fourth quarter and there's a really good game going on between Kansas State and West Virginia, and the Michigan State game is a joke, then I adapt. I alternate. I flip games on and off depending on the situation. But I'll start with Michigan State on the main screen, and then I like Georgia, Kentucky, and Clemson, Boston College on the other two screens. Okay, 3:30. Our 3:30 window historically is a good one. Has been a bit weak this year. Notre Dame, Georgia Tech. Indiana at Rutgers. UAB, Louisiana Tech. TCU and Baylor play. Also Auburn, LSU, of course. Iowa, Northwestern. And then we'll put the 4 o'clock Texas, Oklahoma State game in there as well. And the other 4 o'clock games, which include Virginia Tech and Louisville, and Ole Miss and Vanderbilt. Okay. At 3:30/4 o'clock, my approach to that window would be, from a talent standpoint, I want to watch LSU and Auburn play. It's LSU and Auburn. The more important game is Oklahoma State and Texas. So, boom, that's going to get the main screen. Hi, Toasty. Texas and Oklahoma State want to remind everyone that the super chat is on as well, so you can help support the effort. Keep in mind, I do this full time. Resigned from ESPN last week, 19 years at ESPN. And so this is it. Full throttle all the time. So anyway, at 3:30, Texas, Oklahoma State being the most important game gets my attention. My two side screens are going to be LSU Auburn and probably Iowa Northwestern. Virginia Tech Louisville, probably Iowa Northwestern. All right, prime time. Got to go Ohio State, Penn State, although I really want to see Arkansas, Texas A&M. And then my other side screen is going to be Florida, Missouri. Oklahoma, Texas Tech could be entertaining, probably not. And then we still really don't have any late night football with the Pac-12 out, but we've got some options there. If you're really starved at after 9:30 with Utah State, San Diego State, BYU, Western Kentucky, and Nevada and UNLV on FS1 at 10:30. That'll be over about 2:15 a.m. Did you catch my comment before on what Feinbaum said? I did not catch your comment, which was just that he made a comment. Nebraska is a total embarrassment. Why? Because they tried to play football this weekend. Okay. Feinbaum's just a bit out there sometimes. I have great respect for the man. Long time in newspapers, but he certainly can err in his judgment at times. Unless there was anything more to it than that. Nebraska was looking to play some football. The Big Ten had every right to shut them down, believing that the other conferences, or in this case, it's a FCS school, is not going to be in compliance with necessarily with their guidelines going forward. So the Big Ten had stated, I think it was pretty obvious that that was going to get shut down. All right. Great to see everyone. Keep in mind, we've got on Patreon our watch party tonight at 7:30 Minnesota, Maryland. That'll be a good time. Always is. They're much requested. Watch party, 7:30 Eastern time on Patreon. Please sign up. Just search Mark Rogers TV. And then after the game, we'll jump back onto our channel, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, for instant analysis. We will take your calls and preview week 9. And then all day, hey, Luke, we're signing off, Luke, but we're getting you set for tonight. So Patreon watch party coming up at 7:30 during Maryland, Minnesota. I'm doing this just for Luke. Maryland, Minnesota watch party at 7:30 on Patreon. After the game, instant analysis call-in show. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Saturday, we go on live at 3 after the noon Eastern time window for the call-in show and the wrap-up show and everything. And then we go late night after the primetime games, live call-in show. So we appreciate everybody jumping on board. Check us out on Mark Rogers TV. It was great to see everyone. And we will see you here Sunday night at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you, Infected Chris. Daniel, thanks for the effort. I appreciate it. Hopefully you can figure it out next time, but I much appreciate that, Daniel. Thank you so much. Roberto, what I meant is that the Big Ten built a schedule determining that the league would not play non-conference games because they can only control the guidelines and stipulations executed by the programs within their league. Therefore, they didn't want to mess around traveling and playing in other facilities against players and coaches that were tested outside of their qualifications. So they wouldn't allow that if they didn't allow that to be scheduled, they weren't going to allow that to be a haphazard one-off. Let's just pick up a game. All right, everyone. We'll see you next time.